everyone, and welcome to this video about still life, whether it is boring or whether it's still relevant in 2019. Also, I hope to do a little bit of painting on this still life that I've created below. I do hope you like it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new, of course. And if you are interested in what still life actually is, certainly a term that can cause confusion. It basically is a painting that encompasses inanimate objects. So this can include fruit, for example. It can include flowers, which is often created, and often people think it's a flower painting, but in actual fact it does fit into the genre of still life. And things like books, for example, you will often get wine, bottles of wine, wine glasses. You can even get skulls and also dead animals, believe it or not. Quite often if you see some old classical art, you might see a sort of table full of different types of objects, such as some beautiful fruit. Grapes, as you can see here, are a popular one to paint. You may get some flowers, and then you may get a big dead bird stuck in the middle, like a huge dead pheasant, for example, showing the kind of kill of the day, perhaps, and that still fits into the category of still life. Still life has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and in the kind of Renaissance paintings you got a lot of symbolism within the works, and that's purely because at the time in the Renaissance the artist and the general public were very much religious people. They were religious focused people, and to symbolize often their devotion to God, or to perhaps send a message to the viewer, sometimes about the devil even, it can get dark, they would add symbolic elements to their painting in order to inform the viewer of what they were trying to say. Quite often it would be obvious to the viewer of that particular time, but obviously because we've had these paintings and we've seen them in galleries, we can then deduce what the artist was trying to say, and it's not necessarily the way we would depict our thoughts and feelings in paintings now. However, I do quite like to add symbolism in my paintings, and so I do like to add symbolism in my still lives. I don't think that there is anything wrong with it. In fact, I think it adds to a great element of storytelling. But you can get a literal still life where it's essentially, and I'm pretty sure that Leonardo da Vinci was somebody who liked to do studies of still lives without having any kind of actual meaning attached to them. At least that's what some art experts say, whether or not you can take whatever you want from that. So you have some very great artists that you can visit in galleries. You often had as well some artists who like to mix still life with their portraits, and so it was a kind of way of adding those two elements. If you were a great artist who was highly skilled at still life, but portraiture was more desirable, it was more likely to sell, then you could always sort of find a way around it and add a still life element into your painting to kind of show your technical skill, add some extra symbolism. For example, Caravaggio, somebody who I really think is one of the greatest artists of all time, even though he was a murderer. Let's pretend we didn't say that. But despite that, he had the great ability of incorporating his still lives within his portraiture paintings. And I think that often when you're looking at his paintings, the still life kind of becomes one with the painting, and you don't really separate the two because he has such an incredible technical skill. And very often he, like nowadays, emphasised that sort of very, very realistic skill that he had. And now when you look at still life paintings now, and artists that specialise in still life, you very often have the focus being on the more realistic side of painting, so showing a real great technical skill. But those types of hyperrealism and realism have actually been around for a long time, and artists like Caravaggio was one of them. Another really great painting that I like personally, and I've mentioned it when I did my National Gallery kind of brief tour, was a painting by Calf, and it's of a lobster. Now, I don't recommend killing any animals or going out and killing lobsters for making paintings, but in this particular still life it has a lobster as kind of the centerpiece of the still life, and I do think that on a kind of technical level that painting painting, it just works so beautifully, the way the light is reflected. And it's one of those paintings as well that looks even better in real life. I often think that art can look so different in photographs and in up close. And I've seen that painting up close and really right in my face, and it's just so beautifully handled and absolute highest amount of skill. So if you ever get a chance to see it, if you are in London, it's on the main floor, and the National Gallery has like a million floors, but it's on the floor that has most of the paintings in a slightly smaller room. But the actual genre of still life has gone up and down over the years, much like many different genres of art. So for example, if you think about landscape now, I would say landscape is probably one of the most popular at this moment in time, one of the most popular genres where you'll get it sort of sold. It's much easier to sell landscapes than it is any other, I think, genre at the moment. Animals like dogs, for example, dog paintings, again, sell very, very well. But these statistics, so these sort of hierarchy has changed over the years. There was a time when still life was considered to be one of the lowest forms of art. It was considered to be the least popular, and people didn't used to go and flock to buy it or see it as being any particular to have any particular praise sort of heaped upon it. Portraiture has always done pretty well, but landscape and still life have really, I think, moved around on that sort of table. Andy Warhol, I believe in the 50s, was somebody who really reignited the interest in still life. And obviously the Impressionists as well, Cézanne and Monet, great impressionistic still lifes, and Van Gogh, another one. Although I think that quite possibly people don't necessarily associate Van Gogh with still life, because when people, not everybody, but sometimes, and even myself included, I think if I see a painting of lots of flowers, I don't necessarily associate it with still life. For me, still life was fruit and and cups. And another example, not just cups, but kind of everyday kitchen items or dinner items, for example. And you can include books, and also the element of adding a skull was always very interesting. If you've seen the painting of The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein the Younger, also in the National Gallery, that's another great incorporation and marriage of portraiture with still life. And the still life has a great amount of symbolism, and if you work through the objects in that painting, they've got all hidden sort of meanings. And a skull would naturally indicate death. I think that's quite an obvious one, but there were times when you'd have different objects, so sinister looking objects. I do believe there was an artist who created a painting where a dragonfly was supposed to symbolize the devil, which I thought was incredibly clever, and elements of the fruit were supposed to indicate human souls or something like that. So I thought that was just fascinating and really great way of putting together what you would consider to be everyday objects into a painting, and then throwing in some meaning and story. I just think has an immense amount of power, and creating a more hidden layer underneath the painting itself. And Andy Warhol, as I mentioned just a second ago, was great in showing people that you can take ordinary things that you would never consider to be art, for example like Campbell's soup tin, and creating it into a great print and great work of art, so memorable, and something that you wouldn't necessarily associate with art in general. So there we go, there's a little bit of discussion about still life. In my opinion, it's not boring at all. I really do love a good still life, particularly if it's executed in a very technical way. And I think it's a great, as I mentioned, a great marriage of technical skill, hidden meaning, and great observation of light. The way that a lot of still lives have an element of having a really, I'm talking more of the sort of classical still lives. You get not Cézanne or the impressionistic ones, but you get a sort of a sense of very dark background, and then you'll get the light dancing upon the objects. And I do really like the reflections and the play of the light and the shadows. And I think that whilst that is so observed in portraiture, I think that in still life it is somewhat underrated. And I think that there is a resurgence now in popularity of these sort of hidden, not necessarily hidden, but kind of slightly forgotten genres. And still life is definitely making a comeback. I don't think that still life though will ever leave, because it's been going on for so many hundreds of years that people have a desire still to buy it, they have a desire to see it still. I'm not sure that it will reach the highest heights of landscape at the moment, but I do think it is having a great amount of resurgence. And when I've exhibited my work previously, probably in the past couple of years, I would say that still life is hugely popular for people who want to decorate their homes because they really want to see something that has perhaps that element of, you know, not necessarily eating, but I mean, I do love to eat, but you get that element of the kitchen, the home, that warm feeling of seeing objects that you would have in your bowl, you have fruit, and that's sometimes, in fact, certain fruit, for example, can be quite evocative. You get lemons and oranges together, reminds you of summertime. You get winter fruits that can really bring the feeling of Christmas. So you get all these different elements, and they can add warmth, I think, to a home. So put all that symbolism aside, and you've got something that looks really good in homes. So there we go. That's my case for still life. I do champion it. I absolutely love it. I love painting a good still life. It really brings back that sort of initial element of my artistic career when I started painting, when I was very, very young. The very first objects, the very first paintings that I created were of inanimate objects, were of fruit and things like that. So it's, for me, it's got a really good and special place in my heart. Let me know if you enjoy still life painting, or if you just think it's a complete boring waste of time, because everyone has their own opinions of different genres. And I do hope that it will never die out. I don't think it will, but I think it's I think it's underrated. So I'm going to now do a little bit of painting on this. I would just get out of this little corner here, and I will try to show you what I'm going to do next. Now onto the painting side of things. I've just mixed a little bit of colour here just to add some tea, or rather fruit tea, that's going in the centre of the teacup, obviously. And so I'm just going to show you how I create the colour. Now I just want to start with a little bit of dark here, so that I can really build up. And I'm painting on a stretched linen canvas, which is really, really beautiful. It's very, very smooth, and so I can really get the details just right. So I do have to be a little bit careful, because obviously I have built up the paint quite how I want it in the shape of the teacup, and so I don't want to go over that, because then I'll have to repaint this entire section. And so I'm going to actually add, probably later on, just a little bit more blue in the center of the teacup, just to add some more reflection. I do have a little bit here that I might leave, but I do want to make sure that I don't really leave out too much of the reflection of the light, because that's very important when creating any kind of translucent sort of image. And I do want to add a little bit more yellow, because I feel that otherwise this will start to look a little bit too much like the background, and I do want that kind of contrast of the center, as you can see. And the grapes and so forth surprisingly, it didn't actually take very long. It was just quite a lot of glazing, and glazing is really fun to do on fruit because they sort of have, particularly with grapes, they sort of have that translucent look about them. So they're always really, really fun to paint. And I'm just softly making sure that I don't disturb the rest of the cup, but really get that kind of reflective look. And one thing that I do like about still life is that you can leave the brush strokes in, which is good for me. I really do like that element because it sort of looks, therefore, like a bit of a painting. You don't have to, of course, it really is just depends on your personal taste and what you like to do. I really like to do that, but it really doesn't matter if you don't want to. A lot of people don't, are not too keen on leaving in that sort of where you can see that your brush has been there, which is absolutely fine. Either way, either way is absolutely fine. So I just hope that you have enjoyed this little demo and chat about still life, and that I will see you in my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I think I will probably finish that off with a little bit of blue reflection, and I'll have to do that when this is a little bit more dry. But I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and take care, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care, guys.